accusing South Korea of appeasement. It sounds like he's isolating himself on this and with more bluster and more tough talk.
I think everyone recognizes that a military option will have significant consequences. It could be catastrophic and loss of life. It really is, it has to be a last resort. The way to change North Korea's calculation is to get China much more engaged in its actions with North Korea. That requires diplomacy. Not threats, but diplomacy, and that's what we haven't seen from the administration. We haven't seen really a game plan that could lead to a diplomatic end to this crisis.
Because couldn't China just call the president's bluff when he talks about taking action against China on trade as a sort of leverage with North Korea? Couldn't China, President Xi, just fold his hands and say, well, go ahead, I'm not, I'm pretty comfortable, I'm pretty confident that you're not going to do what you're saying you're going to do. The Chinese know that the U.S. can't afford a trade war with China to try to prevent an actual war with North Korea.
Well, you're exactly right. A trade war has a two-edged sword. It not only could hurt China, it could very much hurt the United States and our economy. There's no question about that. But the bottom line is, at this moment, we want to end this confrontation with North Korea. We want to at least put a freeze on their program and hopefully go on a path that ends their development of nuclear weapons that could hit our country or our allies of our country. That requires North Korea to have confidence that China will not tolerate North Korea's development, and which North Korea, I think, recognizes China doesn't want a nuclear North Korea, but China hasn't acted on that. That's where the United States, I think, is losing a partner that could really help us change the equation in North Korea. Instead, we see inconsistent messages coming out of the Trump administration. One day, they like President Xi of China. The next day, they want to impose additional sanctions. We haven't seen a consistent strategy as it relates to North Korea.
And when you heard the president over the weekend, when he was asked, well, are we going to war with North Korea, and he said, we'll see. What did you think about that?
Well, I think the president's language certainly has escalated the problems. We know North Korea is dangerous. We know that. We know they've been developing weapons for a long time. We know that they're continuing along that path. That's all given. But what the president has done is isolate the United States from having the type of cooperation from China and Russia that I think is absolutely essential to change the equation in North Korea. So the president's language here is saying, well, we'll see about dropping bombs or what our military options are, I don't think helps us in trying to find a non-military solution.
And should the U.S. try to start negotiations with the Kim Jong-un regime? You heard the president say a couple weeks ago in Phoenix, well, we feel like they're respecting us now. Obviously, this test over the weekend, I guess, runs counter to that somewhat. But should we start to engage in these diplomatic talks with North Korea, do you think?
Our objective is to get North Korea to change its course, to first freeze its current developments so they do no more tests, and secondly to pull back on their development of nuclear weapons and the capacity of delivering those nuclear weapons. The way to do that is to engage China and to have China work with the United States so that North Korea is isolated. Yes, we need to communicate and work to change the equation there, and that will require some discussions with North Korea, but we're not in that position where we could make that productive unless we have China willing to really engage North Korea. That's where I think the president's policies have not been clear, and instead we hear the rhetoric about dropping weapons or using military, which I believe isolates ourselves not only from North Korea but also from China.
Okay, Senator, we want to take a quick break. As you know, there's another big story developing in Washington, and that's President Trump's expected decision to end the DACA program for the Dreamers. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. We'll be right back. Nearly 800,000 young undocumented immigrants could soon lose the government program that protects them from deportation. Sources say President Trump is expected to end the Obama-era program known as DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. We're back with Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee. And Senator Cardin, I want to get to this issue of, we think the president's going to come out tomorrow. He's going to get rid of DACA. There might be a 6-month delay on this. Obviously, it's going to cause great anxiety in the undocumented community and in the Hispanic community, of course. But I guess the question is, if he's going to make it a 6-month delay so Congress can pass something, are you confident at all that this is going to get through the Congress?
We don't know what Congress will do, but if the president goes forward with saying the DACA program will end, it's not only tragic for the 800,000 that are protected today under DACA, that their future now will be very unclear. It also hurts our economy, and it hurts what this nation stands for, our values. Our values should be to protect people such as these dreamers who have spent basically almost their entire lives here, that are really part of our country. It's a tragic moment if the president, in fact, goes forward with that.
And do you think your Republican colleagues are on the same page as you are when it comes to this?
I think there is a strong bipartisan interest to protect the dreamers. The problem is how Congress will take up immigration legislation. The Senate took up immigration legislation a few years ago, and in fact we passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill that dealt with the dreamers. But at this time, when we have issues such as whether we're going to build a wall on our southern border, how we're going to deal with so many other aspects of the immigration system, including enforcement, it's difficult to see how we could get a bill through the Congress to the president that he would sign, and it puts at great risk the dreamers, those who are protected under the DACA program. So I would just urge the president, don't do this. It's not in our country's interest. It's against our country's interest. It's going to cause great anxiety among hundreds of thousands of people in this country. It could very well hurt our economy, and it'll certainly hurt America's reputation.
Okay, Senator Ben Cardin, thank you very much. We'll be watching that decision tomorrow, as I know you will as well. Thank you very much, Senator, for being on the Situation Room tonight. We appreciate it. Just ahead now, a Category 4 hurricane. Irma could be the next powerful storm to target the U.S. Florida's governor has already declared a state of emergency. We'll get the latest forecast next.